The Orlan-10 is the workhorse of Russian aerial reconnaissance, a small propeller-driven unmanned aircraft with a wingspan of approximately 3 meters and a flight endurance of up to 16 hours. It is the drone that Russian commanders across the entire front depend on for surveillance, artillery spotting, and battlefield awareness. It flies at altitudes between 1,000 and 5,000 meters, carries optical and infrared cameras, and transmits real-time video to ground stations that use the imagery to direct artillery fire, monitor Ukrainian movements, and build the intelligence picture that Russian operational planning is built on. Thousands of Orlan-10s have been deployed since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Russian soldiers are accustomed to seeing them overhead, a familiar silhouette against the sky that signals friendly surveillance, friendly coverage, and the comforting knowledge that someone above is watching the battlefield and providing the information that keeps them alive. Days ago, on the Eastern Front, Russian soldiers in one sector looked up and saw an Orlan-10 flying its usual pattern over their positions. They did not fire at it. They did not report it as suspicious. They continued their routines, moving between positions, parking vehicles, conducting maintenance on equipment, holding briefings in command bunkers, under what they believed was the protective eye of their own reconnaissance aircraft. They were wrong. The drone was theirs, but it was no longer working for them. The capture. Ukrainian electronic warfare units have been engaged in a constant, invisible war against Russian drones since the first day of the full-scale invasion. Their primary mission is disruption, jamming control links, spoofing GPS signals, and degrading the quality of intelligence that Russian drones provide. But occasionally, Ukrainian EW specialists accomplish something far more valuable than disruption: capture. The Orlan-10, despite its widespread use, has well-documented vulnerabilities in its communications architecture. The drone uses a radio data link to communicate with its ground control station, a link that operates on known frequency bands with encryption that Ukrainian signals intelligence has studied extensively over nearly 4 years of war. Ukrainian EW units have developed the ability to not merely jam this link, which would cause the drone to switch to its pre-programmed autonomous flight mode, but to intercept it, decode the control signals, and inject false commands that override the ground station's instructions. In effect, Ukrainian operators can hijack the drone, taking control of its flight path, its camera, and its navigation, while the Russian ground station believes it has lost contact due to a technical malfunction. Approximately 1 week before the events described in this account, a Ukrainian EW team operating in the eastern sector detected an Orlan-10 conducting a reconnaissance mission over the contact line. The team initiated their interception protocol. First, they analyzed the drone's control signal to identify its specific frequency, modulation pattern, and encryption parameters. Then they deployed a targeted electronic attack that severed the link between the drone and its Russian ground station, while simultaneously establishing a replacement link from the Ukrainian EW system. The Russian operators saw their telemetry screens go blank, a not uncommon occurrence that they likely attributed to electronic interference or a technical glitch. Ukrainian operators, meanwhile, saw the drone's camera feed appear on their own screens and felt the aircraft respond to their commands. The Ukrainian team guided the captured Orlan-10 away from the front line, descending it gradually to avoid triggering any automated return-to-base protocols that might still be active in its onboard systems. They landed it in a field behind Ukrainian positions, a controlled touchdown on a relatively flat stretch of damp agricultural ground. Recovery teams reached the aircraft within minutes. The drone was intact, its airframe undamaged, its cameras functional, its avionics and navigation systems operational, its fuel tank still partially full. It was transported to a Ukrainian rear area facility where a team of engineers and electronic warfare specialists was waiting. The conversion. The Ukrainian engineering team that received the captured Orlan-10 had 48 hours to convert it from a Russian reconnaissance asset into a Ukrainian intelligence weapon. The work was intensive, technically demanding, and conducted under conditions of strict operational security. Only a handful of people knew about the captured drone and the plan for its use. The first priority was replacing the communications module. The Orlan-10's original Russian radio data link, the system that connected the drone to its ground station and transmitted video and telemetry, was removed entirely and replaced with a Ukrainian communications module operating on different frequencies with different encryption. This ensured that the drone could be controlled by Ukrainian operators without any possibility of the Russian ground station regaining control or even detecting the drone's transmissions on their monitoring equipment. The second priority was reprogramming the navigation system. The Orlan-10's autopilot, which contained pre-programmed waypoints and return-to-base coordinates for the Russian launch site, was wiped and reprogrammed with a Ukrainian flight plan, a 3-hour surveillance route that would take the drone over Russian positions across a 15-kilometer sector of the front at altitudes and speeds consistent with normal Orlan-10 operations. The flight plan was designed to look, from the ground, exactly like a routine Russian reconnaissance mission. The same altitude, the same speed, the same circling patterns that Russian troops on the ground were accustomed to seeing from their own Orlan drones. The third priority was the cameras. The Orlan-10's optical and infrared camera systems were tested, calibrated, and connected to the new Ukrainian communications module. The engineers ensured that the video feed would be transmitted in real time to a Ukrainian ground station, where intelligence analysts would be waiting to process the imagery as it arrived. 46 hours after the drone landed in the Ukrainian field, it was ready. Repainted markings were deliberately avoided. The drone retained its original Russian appearance, including its serial numbers and unit markings. From the ground, from the air, from any distance, it looked exactly like what it was. A Russian Orlan-10 conducting a routine mission. The only difference, invisible and lethal, was who was watching through its cameras. The mission. The converted Orlan-10 was launched at approximately 9:30 on a gray, overcast late February morning. Conditions that provided a high ceiling for the drone to operate beneath, while reducing the visibility that might allow sharp-eyed Russian observers to notice any subtle differences in the aircraft's flight characteristics. The drone climbed to approximately 2,000 meters, standard Orlan-10 operational altitude, and turned east toward Russian-held territory. It crossed the contact line without incident. Ukrainian EW teams along the front had been coordinated to ensure that none of their jamming systems would interfere with the converted drone's new Ukrainian communications link. The drone flew on, transmitting a steady stream of high-resolution video to the Ukrainian ground station, where 5 intelligence analysts sat at screens, cataloging everything the cameras revealed. Below the drone, Russian soldiers continued their routines. The Orlan-10's familiar silhouette was visible against the overcast sky, a shape that Russian troops had seen hundreds of times before, a shape that meant friendly surveillance, that meant someone was watching out for them. Nobody looked twice. Nobody reached for an air defense weapon. Nobody reported the drone as unusual on any radio channel that Ukrainian signals intelligence was monitoring. Over the next 3 hours, the drone flew a methodical pattern across 15 kilometers of Russian-held territory, and the intelligence it gathered was extraordinary in its completeness and detail. The cameras identified and geolocated 4 Russian armored vehicle concentrations, tanks and BMPs parked in positions that had been concealed from Ukrainian drones by camouflage netting, and the S-300 air defense coverage that had previously made Ukrainian reconnaissance flights in this area too dangerous. With the air defense system in the sector recently degraded, though not eliminated entirely, and the Orlan flying under what appeared to be friendly identification, the cameras had unrestricted access to positions that Ukrainian intelligence had been trying to map for weeks. The drone overflew 2 Russian artillery battery positions, 3 2S-19 MSTS howitzers in each, that were positioned in tree lines with their guns oriented toward Ukrainian positions. The exact coordinates of each gun were recorded, along with the locations of their ammunition pre-positioning points and the routes they used to displace to alternate firing positions. A Russian command post, a cluster of vehicles with communications antennas and a generator, partially concealed in a farmstead, was identified and cataloged. The drone's cameras captured the vehicle types, their configuration, and the pattern of activity around the site that confirmed its function as a battalion-level headquarters. 2 supply depots were identified, one containing stacked ammunition crates visible under an open-sided shelter, the other containing fuel bladders and vehicle maintenance equipment positioned in a compound surrounded by an earth berm. Both had been unknown to Ukrainian intelligence before this mission. A previously unidentified Russian mortar battery, 4 tubes positioned in a tree line, was spotted and geolocated. The drone's infrared camera detected the heat signatures of recently fired tubes, confirming that the battery was active and currently engaging Ukrainian positions. The intelligence analysts at the Ukrainian ground station processed the imagery in real time, generating a target list that grew with every passing minute of the drone's flight. By the time the Orlan completed its 3-hour mission and was recovered by Ukrainian forces, landing at a predetermined site well behind Ukrainian lines, the analysts had compiled a comprehensive targeting package, 6 high-priority targets, each with precise GPS coordinates, confirmed identification, and assessed military value. The Orlan-10 did not return to its Russian base. Its Russian operators, who had presumably written off the drone as a technical loss days earlier, would not know what had happened until the consequences became unmistakably clear. The strikes. The targeting package generated by the Orlan's mission was passed to Ukrainian strike planners, who designed a coordinated series of attacks to be executed that night, maximizing the element of surprise by striking before the Russians could change the positions that the drone had observed. 6 targets were struck between 01 and 3:30 in the early morning hours. A combination of HIMARS GMLRS rockets and FPV drone swarms. Each weapon matched to the target it was best suited to destroy. Strike 1. The battalion command post in the farmstead, hit by 2 GMLRS rockets that struck the main building and the generator simultaneously. The building collapsed. The communications vehicles in the courtyard were shredded by shrapnel. An estimated 8 to 12 officers and communication staff were killed or wounded. The battalion lost its ability to coordinate operations across its sector. Strike 2, the 1st Artillery Battery, 3 2S-19 Mestus howitzers hit by precision-guided artillery rounds while the guns were in their firing positions, exactly where the Orlan's cameras had observed them. All 3 howitzers destroyed. Crews killed at their guns. Ammunition pre-positioned nearby detonated in secondary explosions that continued for 40 minutes. Strike 3. The 2nd Artillery Battery, struck by FPV drones that approached at low altitude through a gap in Russian air defense coverage that the Orlan's flight had helped identify. 3 more howitzers destroyed, their crews caught during a firing mission, their tubes still warm from the barrage they had been conducting against Ukrainian positions. Strike 4, the ammunition depot, hit by a single GMLRS rocket that struck the open-sided shelter directly. The detonation of the stored artillery shells created a chain reaction of secondary explosions that lasted over 2 hours, visible on satellite imagery as a sustained thermal signature that consumed the depot and everything within a 100-meter radius. Strike 5, the fuel depot, struck by 3 FPV drones that targeted the fuel bladders. The resulting fire burned for hours, consuming diesel, lubricants, and vehicle maintenance supplies worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and leaving Russian units in the sector without fuel resupply for over a week. Strike 6, the mortar battery, hit by FPV drones that struck the 4 tubes and the ammunition stacked beside them. The mortars that had been firing on Ukrainian positions that same afternoon were silenced permanently. Total damage assessment. It crossed 6 strikes enabled by 3 hours of intelligence gathered by a single captured drone. Ukrainian forces inflicted the following estimated losses. Personnel killed or wounded, 85 Russian soldiers and officers, including the battalion command staff, 6 artillery crews, mortar crews, and depot personnel. Equipment destroyed, 6 2S-19 MSDAS self-propelled howitzers, 9 to 12 million, 4 82mm mortar tubes, 60,000, 120,000. Battalion command post with communications equipment and vehicles, 3.5 million. Ammunition depot with contents, 5-10 million. Fuel depot with contents, 500,000, 1.5 million. Multiple support vehicles and equipment, 1.2 million. Total estimated material losses, 18.5, 30.6 million. Cost of the entire operation, from Orlan capture through reprogramming to reconnaissance flight to 6 strikes. The Orlan conversion cost approximately $5,000 and $10,000 in replacement components and engineering time. The GMLRS rockets cost approximately $320,000, $440,000. The FPV drones cost approximately $5,000, $8,000. Total operational cost, approximately $330,000, $460,000. Return on investment, approximately 50 to 80 to 1. The mole in the sky. Russian forces in the sector experienced the strikes as an inexplicable, devastating catastrophe that defied every assumption about their operational security. 6 targets, dispersed across 15 kilometers of front line and rear area, many of them carefully concealed under camouflage netting and positioned using terrain masking, some of them operational for weeks without being detected or targeted by Ukrainian forces, were struck with surgical precision in a single night. The pattern was unmistakable to any intelligence officer reviewing the targeting. Someone had provided Ukraine with a complete, detailed, geolocated picture of every significant Russian military asset in the sector. The kind of picture that only a high-level source with direct access to the formation's operational dispositions could provide. The initial Russian reaction, based on intercepted communications, was immediate and predictable. Suspicion of a human intelligence source, a traitor within their ranks, another defector like the one that had devastated a different Russian formation earlier that month. Counterintelligence officers descended on the sector within hours of the strikes. Personnel were pulled from their duties and interrogated. Officers who had knowledge of the destroyed positions' locations were questioned about their communications, their contacts, and their movements. Access logs for classified maps and operational documents were audited with frantic urgency. Phone records of every officer and senior NCO in the formation were seized and examined for suspicious calls or messages. The same paranoia that had poisoned trust in one Russian formation, making officers fear their own colleagues, making commanders reluctant to share operational information, now infected another unit, spreading through the Russian military like a contagion that Ukrainian operations were deliberately cultivating. 3 officers were detained for questioning in the first 48 hours. None of them guilty of anything except having access to the information that Ukrainian forces had obtained. Their interrogations consumed command attention and resources that should have been devoted to rebuilding the destroyed capabilities and restoring the formation's combat effectiveness. The mole hunt became its own form of damage, paralyzing the formation's staff work and degrading its ability to recover from the physical destruction of the strikes. It was not until several days later, when the Russian drone unit that had originally operated the captured Orlan-10 correlated the timing of the drone's disappearance with the geographic scope and precision of the intelligence that had enabled the strikes, that the true source of the leak was identified. The realization was stunning. Their own reconnaissance drone had been captured intact, its communication systems replaced, its navigation reprogrammed, and the aircraft flown back over their positions for 3 hours, mapping, photographing, and geolocating every asset the formation possessed, while their own soldiers watched it from below and felt safe because it looked like one of their own. According to intercepted communications, the reaction among Russian officers who learned the truth ranged from disbelief to fury to a kind of existential dread. If Ukraine could capture their drones, turn them, and fly them overhead without detection, then no position was safe. Every Orlan-10 in the sky, and there were hundreds flying across the front on any given day, could potentially be an enemy agent, mapping the positions it was supposed to protect. The psychological effect was corrosive. Russian air defense personnel began questioning whether to engage their own drones. Drone operators became obsessed with verifying their control links, interpreting every signal fluctuation as a potential hijacking attempt. Communications protocols were reviewed and tightened. Changes that slowed operations and reduced the flexibility that Russian drone units needed to respond to rapidly changing battlefield conditions. Strategic implications. The capture and conversion of the Orlan-10 represents a form of warfare that blurs the line between electronic warfare, intelligence operations, and psychological operations, combining all 3 into a single action that damages the enemy across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The physical damage: 6 targets destroyed, 60 to 85 casualties, $30 million in equipment lost, is significant by any measure. But the intelligence precedent may be more important still. Ukrainian EW specialists have demonstrated that they can capture Russian drones intact, convert them within 48 hours, and use them to conduct reconnaissance missions that the enemy cannot detect because the reconnaissance platform looks, flies, and behaves exactly like the enemy's own equipment. This capability, once demonstrated, creates a persistent threat that exists in every Russian commander's mind every time he sees an Orlan overhead. Is that our drone or theirs? The implications extend beyond individual drone captures. If Ukrainian EW can hijack one Orlan-10, it can potentially hijack many, creating a network of turned drones that systematically maps Russian positions across the entire front. Russian countermeasures, strengthening encryption, adding authentication protocols, implementing self-destruct mechanisms for captured drones, all come at costs in complexity, operational speed, and reliability. Every countermeasure makes the drone system harder to use, slower to deploy, and more prone to failures that reduce its effectiveness for its intended purpose. Since February 2022, Russia has lost approximately 149,000 soldiers killed and wounded, over 11,600 tanks destroyed, nearly 24,000 armored vehicles eliminated, and now the drones that Russia uses to find and protect its remaining forces are themselves becoming weapons in Ukrainian hands. Turned against their makers, flying over positions they were supposed to guard, and guiding the strikes that destroy what they were built to protect. The Orlan-10 that flew over Russian positions that morning carried no weapons. It fired no shots, it dropped no bombs. It simply looked, with eyes that now served Ukraine, and transmitted what it saw to analysts who converted images into coordinates and coordinates into destruction. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon on the battlefield is not a missile or a drone or a tank. Sometimes it is information gathered by a machine that the enemy trusted because it looked like their own. Ukraine fights. Ukraine captures. Ukraine turns your weapons against you. This is Iron Front. The battlefield speaks louder than propaganda.